Hello, Jill. How are you?
Tauscher. Thank you, Jill Doherty from CNN. You know, I hate to bring you back to the same subject, but missile defense. Just this morning, I was at a briefing over at Brookings, and an expert was quoting the Russians as saying that this treaty does, and I'm not quite sure what word they're using, but link or limit. He seemed to be saying that they interpret it as limit missile defense. Can you just, definitively explain?
I can definitively tell you that I'm kind of an expert too. I was chairman of strategic forces in the House, know a little bit about missile defense, and was certainly there when most of this was discussed and negotiated. As we've talked before, the presidents met in July, and they made it very clear that there is an interrelationship between strategic offensive and strategic defensive weapons. But there is no limit or constraint on what the United States can do with its missile defense systems.
So that definitely the U.S.
Definitely,
can go ahead
positively,
and
in
build
no
develop.
way, no how. There are no limits to our ability to put the phased adaptive approach forward and the other systems that we have worked on in the past. Certainly we have our CONUS system in Fort Greely and in Vandenberg, but there's no limit, no constraint. No. Yes?
Follow up on Jill's question. I think what the expert was saying today at Brookings was that the fact sheet that he saw said there were no limits on current or planned missile defense programs. And his concern was, well, what about the unplanned ones? And, yeah. Well, Lavrov on Friday was also going into this, and he had some comment from Moscow which was to the effect that he was implying that the understanding is that missile defense is more or less at the current levels, and if there's a jump on one side or the other, then the other side can pull out of the START treaty. Now, is that your understanding as well?
Well, let me just say this. There are no constraints to missile defense in the START treaty. That's one piece of it. Each party, if you look at the START treaty itself, each party has the ability to include unilateral statements. Those statements now are still being negotiated, but each party has the ability to make a unilateral statement. For example, in the START treaty, both sides had statements. One had, certainly from our side, we had certain statements and the Russians had certain statements, and in the end, we abrogated the ABM treaty, and they didn't get out of START even though we have missile defenses. So unilateral statements are what they are. They're a statement by, they're not agreed, obviously. One side says one thing, the other side says another. Those are still being negotiated, but they are a statement by one side that is not influenced by the other, and they are part of the treaty package. They are viewed by the Senate and the Duma, but in our case, there are no limits and no constraints on missile defense.
So yeah. You said those statements are still being negotiated.
Each side is going to make their own decision, not negotiated with each other, but each side will make their own decision as to whether they will have a unilateral statement and what they will say.
And so you expect them to have one on missile defense?
I don't know. They may. But once again, if you've passed as history, you have what happened in the START agreement. And, we had a statement, they had a statement. We ended up abrogating the ABM treaty, and their statement said that they may leave the START treaty if we had missile defenses, and they didn't.
Would that not undermine this treaty somewhat, though, if that's their understanding of it, that missile defense is somehow frozen at its current and planned levels?
Nothing that we have done or said leads anybody to believe that missile defense is either frozen or will be constrained. Jill?
Just one last one. It's pretty much